Y'all, today we need to talk about a strange idea that I never thought Wizard101 would consider. But what we're about to talk about is based on a message straight from the devs. Wiz is considering adding gear renting into the game. Now, the fact that this is even on the table is kind of nuts, but I think the idea of gear renting is that you would have some way probably of trading either gold or crowns to get gear that's hard to get, but you only have it for a limited time. I'm gonna assume if they added this feature, that's like, you know, how it would work. But before we dive into all the ways that, you know, gear renting could work at all, let's talk about why they're even considering this. I'm sure y'all have heard this term thrown around all the time. For anyone talking about PvP or any real endgame content, there is a gigantic barrier of entry for a lot of people. After they quest to level 180 after this update, right, they're done with the game, especially because they don't have a way to interact with any other parts of the end game. And you don't have to take my word for it, you can just look at the queue. And I really hate to do this and just put it out like here, but this is like the evening, as in it's not like no one's sleeping in the US yet. And right now, if you scroll over all these games, there is one match happening at level 60, there's one match happening at level 180, and then there's one match happening at level 170, meaning all of these people were only able to get each other because they're all different levels. That is the current state of the PvP queue 2 weeks after a brand new level 180 level cap increasing update drop. For 2 weeks after a Darkmoor update to drop, for there not to be many pages, not just one or two, many pages of matches, it's borderline unprecedented. And I think what they're trying to say is that the reason that people aren't engaging with PvP is simply because they just can't get the gear, and that's it. Now, I have a lot of strong feelings about this. While I don't think that gear is the only reason people aren't doing PvP right now, I do think gear is a big part of it. And I'll say this, y'all, I think anything with gear that's temporary is a very poor idea. There's only one other item in the entire game that works on a timer, which is what rented gear would work for, right? Let's say you spent like maybe 5,000 crowns, maybe you get to own a piece of gear for maybe like, you know, 30 days. I don't know how it would work. I'm obviously just throwing out numbers. I haven't said these numbers, but there's only one other example of anything that works like that, and that is mounts. And I don't need to be the one to tell anybody, that is a very unpopular feature with mounts. Anytime someone has a permanent mount, they keep it. Anytime they have a mount that's 7 days, 30 days, anything like that, they're gonna keep it begrudgingly if it's like a stat mount. But I very doubt that people are keeping 7-day, 30-day mounts in their inventory ever. It's just not a thing that people do because it doesn't feel like you actually have the item. And it is so crazy to me that we already live in a world where you gotta rent things and feel bad that you don't own it, and now they're trying to add this to Wizard101. I think that's ridiculous. Yes, there is a barrier of entry problem, but in my opinion, that's because all of the really good gear is way too limited in the number of sources that you can get it from. Right now at level 180, either you're looking at the Abomination set or you're looking at the Lemuria raid set. That just means that you either need to be in a guild that raids or you have to spam team up or have a couple of people to farm with. That's it. Renting gear isn't gonna make people feel like their concerns are being listened to. Adding more sources that are permanent for the gear that we want is listening. That's what they have to do. In my opinion, we have like a weird pipeline, especially with things like the crafter that gives gear that just doesn't work well, right? You have to raid to PvP, but there's no way for you to PvP to get raid gear. And it's so weird to me, right? They have this weird history where they started doing this. They basically added a way for you to PvP a lot, accumulate the reagents that you get from PvPing, which in case y'all don't know, you get medals every time you PvP. And they made it in the past anyways, where you could craft gear that you otherwise would have to open up packs for. But this was a really good change. The way they handled this, it looks like Dookie, but it gives the stats that you want, and it's only allowed in PvP because it has that minus 100% mana thing. When you have a feature like this, why not make it so that you add Abomination set, the Lemuria set, all of that? Don't make it look good, make it minus 100% mana, and maybe don't even make it give item cards if you want to really make it feel like a second class set, because that's what they clearly want, right? If you want raids and all this end game to feel like you need to grind to get the best stuff, you can keep that, but you already have a crafter where you can actually get permanent gear for doing things like PvP. Why not keep this and also give people an added incentive to PvP? Wouldn't it be nice if you could PvP to get raid gear instead of having to raid to get raid gear. And in my opinion, PvP is not just limited to the most traditional version that we know. There's another version of PvP, which is called Beast Mode. And what do you know? This also has a way that you could craft all kinds of things, right? There's a recipe shop that you could use to craft all kinds of cosmetics. I would love if there was a way to get a bunch of these reagents for interacting with this game for hours and hours in a side activity, just like PvP, right? You're going against other people, right? What if you could make reagents work for you to make raid gear with this activity? I think using all the crafters that are already associated with PvP to make PvP more rewarding and accessible is really the direction they ought to go. I really disagree with the concept of renting gear in general, simply because you never feel like you have it, which means no one will want to interact with it. But let's be very honest. I think while yes, gear is a big reason why people don't PvP, this is just something that a lot of people that already PvP say to make the issue not about what it really is. And I'm gonna sound like a broken record saying this, but honestly, I feel insulted, frankly, after going through all the things that I've gone through PvPing, for them to come out with this gear renting idea like it's some kind of magical solution. The problem with PvP is that there's blatant TOS breaking and elitism. Yet people that run around acting like because they have high rank that they're better than everybody else, they make actual content calling out people for being bad at the game because they're not good at PvP, and they get to freely do this in the Wizard101 Discord of all places. Like, imagine if you're low rank. Oh no, you're low rank in PvP. Imagine you're low rank and then you go into the PvP channel in the Wizard101 Discord, and you see the exact people causing the issues for you in-game being able to talk freely with the devs and give feedback like they aren't doing anything wrong. Like, they're not making this an extremely hostile environment for everybody. Imagine being that person, and then the devs are like, you know what, we're gonna let you rent gear, now you should be able to PvP. Imagine beating someone in a match and being extremely harassed. That person gets muted, and they come back a few months later, a year later, with a fully kitted out account, and now they aren't banned anymore because they're on a new account, or they've decided to share another person's account. Imagine telling that person that finally thought they were free of the harassment in PvP that, oh yeah, you know what, you can have gear for like 30 days. That should fix the issue, right? Like, if they're actually thinking about investing resources into making PvP accessible and welcoming, that is the point. A, B, C, and D, right? Everything after that, spellements, gear, pets, all of that, yes, lower the barrier of entry, be my guest. But like, if you're not gonna address the actual big issue, then I think it's kind of crazy to talk about something as stupid as gear renting as somehow a solution to all of this. I really don't mean to be hostile. I get that it comes from a good place. Oh, gear is hard to get. What if you could rent it? But frankly, no, that's not a solution. There needs to be more sources of gear that doesn't just involve being in a group of 8 people to raid, if you really are serious about giving us access to gear. But gear is not the full problem. It is maybe 20% of it maximum. I'd say it's like 20% gear, 20% spellments, and the rest is just the people occupying that space and the very few standards that are in place when it comes to moderating them. But I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on the current state of PvP in this game, especially fresh off of an update. It looks horrific to me, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. But also, do y'all really think that gear renting could solve this accessibility issue, this barrier of entry issue? And maybe the thing that I'm pinpointing as a cause of the decline in PvP, maybe it's based off of my experiences as a streamer. So maybe y'all have other reasons why you might be, you know, a little bit, maybe you have second thoughts about PvP. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts about this, especially because this really could become a solution. And in my opinion, yes, maybe it'll create a small increase in the number of people that PvP. But if you're looking at a limited amount of resources and time that you can invest into making PvP better, I just don't agree that this is a place to start. And in fact, I think it'll have very little impact on bettering that side activity. Let me know y'all's thoughts for sure. Drop a like if you enjoyed. I just wanted to talk about this because it is literally an idea that might actually happen. And I don't know. I just had thoughts. I look forward to reading y'all's thoughts, y'all. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah, y'all.